Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Fandom Fridays, where we proceed to read all the fanfics that are not populated. Why? Because Inuyasha had a new anime series come out this year and this month, and my god, was it fun! Yeah, I greatly enjoyed myself. It was a blast, and there was a lot to be had. It just made me realize that I gotta do something to honor that today. My downside is it's also October, and normally I do Halloween fics around this time. Hey, Trixie! Yes? Do you think that since Iwasa falls demons, we could make an exception? It wouldn't really be an exception. It actually would prove the rule. We would be able to get the fic done and say that it's part of that. Right, so without further ado, here is Treeberry Memorial Library. I'm proud to present Happier. Happier by Unlock the Lore. What type of name is that? Inuasa's ears swiveled as the ladybug's wings fluttered, preluding its descent into cooling winds rustling the grass around him. Crouched low with knuckles pressed into the wooden earth and no switching, trained his gaze on the dirt paths leading between the rice paddy fields and the smattering of huts. He knew the pathways between the huts like the back of his hands, stood on many of the thatched roofs and repairing them with the help of men and women. Always leaped down and be bombarded by throngs of children wanting to play with the Inuyasha. The corner of his lips turned upward. Being regarded so highly was uncommon, and he still wasn't sure how to handle it. Sure, there were some who went down with contempt, but it was nothing he was not accustomed to. Praise, adoration, gratitude, those who were almost non-existent among demons, and incredibly rare in humans, and only a budding inclination of something he was worthy of. Nevertheless, Inuyasha preferred the quiet of his home on the outskirts of his village, away from the voices whispering unkindly, and the adoring eyes beckoning to aid him. It was where he could have peace with himself and the one he loved. Kagome accumulated to life in the village as gracefully as he could. Fire could be tempered by the unspoken rules of equality, as he made it known well. It always brought a smile to Inua's face to see her walking with her head held high, and seldom tearing into someone who dared to insinuate she was lesser. Spirits helped the poor soul who insinuated such because she was a woman. Surprisingly, the women in the village revered her, although some thought she was a little odd. Yes, he remained Kagome through and through. The corner of Inuasa's lips dipped downward, his lips hanging into a firm line as his eyes scanned the straw-covered roofs and rustling canopies blanketed the soft blues and gold of the early morning sun. His skin crawled as he shifted, feeling his ankles protest until he rocked backward and onto his behind, not minding the damp grass tickling beneath his undershirt. Although the early morning chill didn't affect him as much, he felt naked without a sukan. Yet, he felt better knowing he was with Kagome, and she was safe within the village. Likely speaking to Kaede about her condition, Inuasa's legs began to bounce with familiar unrest. Memories flashed through his mind of early morning retching. Kagome's hair held back as he rubbed soothing circles on her back helplessly. Her refusal to eat, only taking the smallest bites to appease him, and her constant murmuring as she scribbled in the journals to Summer's imp had brought her at Rin's behest. She refused to allow him to see it, stating it was personal. But her gaze would linger on for a bit longer before she went back to scribbling in it. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He wasn't sure what it was, but he prayed to whoever he was listening to soon find out. If Kagome was ill, he'd do anything in his power to heal her, even if it meant visiting his bastard brother or ambushing him when he returned to seize his chains. Shuddering at thought, Inuasa buried his fingers in his hair and tried to calm the swell of fear threatening to burst free from his chest. Following Moroko's advice not to repeat what he knew to stave off accidents. Kagome was strong. She would be fine. It wouldn't happen again. He wouldn't lose her. Not like this. Not when they had so much left to do together. Not before they actually got to live their lives. It wasn't right. This wasn't the ending she deserved. He also buried his face in his hands. He didn't have the answers, and it was eating him up inside. The idea that he would lose it all again was almost too much to bear. Pressure welled behind his eyes, and he sniffed, attempting to keep the salty sting at bay. Rosewood with a lingering hint of steel, flooded with the bittersweet tinge of green apples, drew him away from his palms. Sniffing the air again, he peered down the path of tall grass dappled with budding blossoms. Iyasu's eyes widened and his heart throbbed at Kagome. His Suikon, almost matching the red-hot kama she wore, draped across her shoulders as she pulled his shut around her. Her other hand lingering ominously over his stomach, twisting her nerves into knots. Without thinking, she rushed as quickly as the wind could guide him to her side. "You okay?" asked Inuyasha, mentally kicking himself for asking such a basic question. But his gaze lingered on her stomach as he looked her over discreetly as he could for any sign of injury. Kagome looked up to him, her smile a bit softer and subdued, though no less warm, and uneasy to seize the nerves flooding in her stomach. "Yeah." As he glanced aside, and the soft golden sunbeams cast an unearthly glow around her, and shadows on her downcast eyes. Inuyasha's heart stammered her beating as she looked up to him, an unreadable expression stealing her smile from his sight. "Can we talk?" He felt his ears perk at the hesitance in her voice, literally depressed against his skull and nerves in return. "All right," he said quizzically, following her with his eyes as they continued up to the path to their home in silence. His gaze never leaving her for long as he tried to gauge some sort of inkling to what this was about. His face screwed up as he thought back. Did he do something? Maybe. Sharp memories resurfaced of Kagome running her fingers along the splintered wood of the Bonier's well, gazing down into it without saying a word. He didn't hover over her, but he watched from afar until Sango came to find her with her daughters, Chichiro and Yukio in tow. "Oh, so close, Vic! So close! It's actually Kinko and Kino." It was a melancholy to Kagome then, and Yuasa couldn't help but wonder as he regretted this, or desisted to stay with him. Perhaps he was missing help. Asking Rin to help him with the cooking was a last-ditch effort. He wanted to make something Kagome would love, and what reminded him of her home the most was her mother's cooking. Robbing her of that, of her mother's love, felt like a debt he could never repay to her. Rin agreed to help him, though most of his efforts were a little off. He managed to make something close to edible. In his opinion, it wasn't all that great, but Kagome ate it with gusto and gave him a watery smile and thanks. "Inuyasha." Kagome's voice startled him in his thoughts, and he looked around. Outside her hut, cozy and quaint, filled him with dreadful relief. What if it was true Kagome missed her home? He didn't want to be alone, but keeping her here, what she didn't want to be. Though, they'd been together so long, could he really go back to being on his own as he did when she was gone? All he had was the hope she returned. Glancing at her side, he glanced at her and grimaced as he noticed her staring down at her stomach. What if his cooking was really that bad and made her sick? Sick enough to want to go home. His mind supplanted tracelessly. He watched her shudder at the thought and opened his mouth at the same time Kagome spoke. "Look, I just asked Rin to help with the—" "We're going to have a baby." His ears perked up and everything came to a lurching stop. Even his breathing stifled, as his world narrowed down till she was all he could see. Anxiety spiked at her scent, and her energy was beginning to drift off of her in wisps of pink, curling and sparkling in the sunlight, filtered through the leaves of the tree they sat under, glittering and surrounding her in almost angelic tune. It reminded him of the Shikon no Tama, and his heart throbbed possibly. "What?" Kagome smiled faintly, anxious and unsure, but he could feel the happiness in how her energy reached for his own as if to soothe. "I'm pregnant, Inuyasha. That's why I've been sick." "So, it wasn't the food I made?" Inuyasha muttered lamely, once his mind could catch up with his mouth, gaze strictly to her stomach. It made sense now why she was holding it. Resting, her pickiness, even that book. Although the last he couldn't make sense of just how he couldn't seem to make sense of they were going to have a child. "How?" He swallowed the question before he could voice. Hell, as if he didn't know how. He was part of the how. She was definitely the cause of the how. It wasn't as if he could deny fooling around with her, especially after they were married, and there was nothing keeping him from loving her besides her word. Still, he hadn't expected it to happen so soon. Though it had been some years since her return, Kagome still looked like she did when she was young. They both didn't question it, decided to bask in the time they had together with their friends. But starting a family? Iwasa swallowed thickly, unable to tear his gaze away from her stomach. You're sure?" Instantly, he reached out to touch her, slowly reminded of his hands. How much he'd done with them. How dangerous it could be for him to hold a new life with them. Sure, Saga and Morocco trusted him to hold their kids, but this was different. Kagame's fingers curled around his wrists and guided his hand to rest against her stomach. He also gulped and willed his hand not to tremble, finding it easier to remain still and confident as he laid her hand over his own. Kaede is very sure. He knows he's rarely ever wrong about this kind of stuff. He was also quiet, though he kept his hand there, staring at her stomach and rubbing his hand in slow circles as if he could feel something. Focusing on Kagame, he searched for something foreign, and his stomach flipped when he found it. A brief glimmer. No more than a little flesh, a mist of yokai, Mr. Ryoko. He shuddered, feeling as if he had been sat 1,000 times with a weight upon his shoulders. Are you happy? Kagame asked, stirring Inuyasha from his thoughts, her voice unsteady and soft, as he was speaking a little skizz piece of a frightened child. We're having a baby? It dawned on him that she would have wanted an answer, as he was just as nervous as he was, if not more. It was her that would be carrying their child, bearing their child, and all he could do was be there for her. Old sickness, sleepless nights, picking meals, he would be there. He also met her gaze, and his heart leapt at what he saw her face of his own mother in his memories. Her arms outstretched to him, billowing sleeves enveloping him as she hugged him close, as if her very being could keep him from the world. She would press warm, fluttery kisses to his dirt-smudged cheeks, and hold his hands when he couldn't find sleep. A world of her own, surrounded by those who refused to let her be because of who she loved. And he worried that the same would fall Kagome. While he was part of the group that fell Naraku, because of what he was, the blood he held, she would never know true peace, or the life of an ordinary woman. And who was to say he would be a good father? He barely knew his own, only inheriting a sword, a robe, and a world of trouble. But his mother, oh, she was everything good in the world, everything right, so was Kagome. He knew no matter what, she would protect the little life, and he'd be damned if she would do it alone. Breathing in deeply, Kagame's scent was spiked with the pungent and worrisome, and Yasa was quick to pull her to him, looking at her fiercely as he buried his chest against her shoulder, until he could see nothing but faint circles behind his eyelids, easing his hold on her when he called. A small noise of surprise he gripped at the back of his undershirt, bringing a smile to his face. I'm scared out of his mind. How was he going to look after them when he could barely take care of himself? Yuasa stamped out the flickering flame before he could grow. This was different. He was wiser now, and he wouldn't be alone. Kagome and the others were there. Worried of rejection. His mother told him often enough that being born half demon was nothing to be ashamed of. With this blooded Kagome's, their children would be a quarter demon at best. Would they resent him for it? Ask him why he couldn't be more? Why he couldn't? Concern. He didn't have a father of his own. No father to speak of. Even Miyoka, the closest person to his father aside from Sesshomaru, was useless and far too late to rear him in any way. But most of all, he was happy. Happy that this child was theirs. From the hair on their head to the smallest toe, it would be a physical reminder of their love, one that he would protect just as relentlessly as he would the woman in his arms. When he finally gathered himself enough, the pressure of tears built until they headed into the corners of his eyes. Stingway drew away from her to press their foreheads together, his lips quivering. It was fine to admit this. It was safe. He was with Kagome. Nothing could hurt him here. Eyes cut clearly, Inuyasha was unable to keep back a pathetic puff of laughter as she choked out the words. I'm scared, he sniffed, ignoring the dribble of warm tears trailing down his cheeks, heat rising to his cheeks. And I'm worried. And I don't know how I'll... Corners of his lips twisted the thought of a child, one of that looked like her or him. He called her mother and how she smiled. Opening his eyes, he found hers looking at him with concern and adoration. What did he do to serve someone who would look at him like that? Concern isn't even half of it. He also muttered, trying to give me a laugh. Happy. So much more than that. Going over the entire found him sustaining, pressing as close to him as their bodies could allow. Quivering lips curved to a small smile. I'm scared, too. Wave of guilt doused the joyous fire in his chest. He also smiled feeling as he searched her eyes, glancing down at his stomach, then aside to their hut. Are you happy? Are they Is this what you want? Was he? Fear lost in his throat, pleased for her not to leave him swallowed. If she wanted to leave, she would be happier away from him, then he could let her go. Like hell, he would enjoy it, but Kagome deserved happiness. We get to have a baby, Inuyasha. Kagome stressed, the word making his heart skip a beat. Tears collected at the corner of his eyes. I almost thought she was upset, down for the wide smiles he sported. You and me? We're... Her hands squeezed at his arms. Inuyasha pulling his hands back to touch her cheeks, wiping away the trails of tears gently. Sunlight warmed the moisture on his fingers as Mitsuru's smile warmed his heart. If possible, he would have frozen the moment right there, Kagome smiling at him, brimming with joy, and his heart aching to leave his chest and rest in her hands. This is like a dream. A breeze rustling the leaves in her hands, pressing away his own, so she could touch his face, wiping away the trails of tears beneath his eyes, reminding him that this was real. Inuyasha leaned forward, pressing his nose against hers tenderly, listening to a small bubble of laughter that swelled in the breaths shared between them before his lips met her own, stifling a sob. It was impossible to hold a kiss with how much he smiled, but he tried anyway, clinging to her as her fingers curled in his hair. You're going to be all right. Both of you are going to be. Inuyasha whispered between kisses, listening to Kagome's murmured affections as he tucked his arms around her, settling his hands back at her, drawing her closer to him. I'll be here, yeah. Pulling away, though, he pressed his lips to her temple, nosing her crown for comfort, listening to her quiet laughs and hugging her a bit tighter as he clung to her. Doesn't matter what happens. I'm all yours. I promise, Kagome. I promise. He didn't know her name yet, what they would become, who they would grow to be like, but he was damn sure that he was theirs, from the first until the last. I know you will, Kagome said. Somehow her belief in him only exaggerated the need to be there for both of them. She settled in his lap, her head resting against Inuyasha's shoulders as he held her close. One hand settled at her hip, while the other hovered at her stomach as he runs her to touch. Unhesitating, Kagome curled her fingers around his own, laid them firmly against her stomach, her lips ghosting along his ear as he leant his head down, shuddering at the sound. I love you. Inuyasha's mouth felt dry as he pressed his lips together, to keep something from embarrassing from slipping out. The emotions that overwhelmed. Kagome had given him so much over the years. This was just another mark in the ever-growing tab of debts he owed her. He made sure that the two of them were comfortable and loved as possible. Be there through her pain and grief. They welcomed their child to the world together. He would tell Kagome all the words his father couldn't tell his mother, every day for the rest of her lives. I love you too, Inuyasha managed to say, the words almost lost against her hair, then again as they were muttered against her cheek, once more against her lips. Kagome's smile was visible when he pulled away, pressing a kiss to her hair. You're gonna be a great dad. Trying to wipe away his eyes as discreetly as possible, Inuyasha felt his heart race at the thought, and ears perking behind him. I don't know about that, he grumbled, glancing away. In typical Kagome fashion, she wouldn't allow him to linger on his thoughts for too long. I do, she said, but with the weight of her hand on his arm, the reassuring squeeze that wrenched his heart. His eyes softened as a thime of their own, attempting to come up with an argument. He had a number of them, but she wouldn't be swayed, and he scoffed, frowning to set pretense. Kagome smiled and leant against him, closing her eyes. She seemed so content where she was, her energy evening out as severe and anxious as dulled at the edges, searching for the glimmer in a sea of pink. He smiled a bit, feeling the atmosphere at her core as he was trying to protect something. On the outside, she remained relaxed and dozing in the early morning lull of chirping insects and budding blossoms. Lazy breeze carrying her sigh and shivered down his spine as her nose pressed to the side of his neck. Curiosity begat nervousness, but Kagome's nonchalance, the gentle fluttering of her being, was enough to see his apprehension. She was so calming, made him feel as if he were in control, or something, and she could have gone anywhere, with anyone, but she chose to stay with him. Damn. Inuyasha smiled, burying his nose in her hair and inhaling her scent. You'll be a great mom, no doubt. I hope you're right. His smile fell. The soft, almost whispered way she spoke those words tugged at his heart. He knew that sound. Doubt, worry, concern, faintly failed beneath her nonchalance and quiet comfort. Ears flickering, he pulled away from her with a frown. Kagome, listen. Yeah? She asked, looking at him. Glancing aside as he gathered his nerve, he also squared his jaw and looked at her once when he wanted to say, Look, I'm wrong about some things. His eyebrow raised and he gave her a narrow-eyed glare, half-hearted, but enough to show he didn't want to be interrupted. With a curt nod from her, he continued, albeit softer, but not you. You'll be a great mom. Kagome's eyes widened, and Yunosa felt his stomach twist. Did she really not think she would be? Didn't she know? Feeling the need to explain, to assuage those fears that may have been deep down inside her, once they were married himself. You looked after Shippo. Your mom was probably one of the greatest people I ever met. His eyes softened as her own clouded over, steadying her with a hand to her shoulder and a slight squeeze. Kagome missed them, and Yuasa understood. He missed them too. When I think about my mom, and all she did for me, I think of her as the perfect mother, because she is loved us as she wasn't a perfect person, but she tried. You'll be perfect for them. I know you won't give up, and I'm not leaving you to do this alone. Kagome laid her hand over his own, squeezed, looking up to him in that soft understanding that made his stomach flip. Inuyasha? Nearly turning his head away, he grumbled reflexively. I'm not good with words. Kagome snorted in that inferiorly cute way she did. She rolled her eyes out, brow arched with challenge at her gaze. Could have fooled me, she said, pressing a kiss to his cheek when he gave her a half-hearted, dismissively annoyed glare. That's what I needed to hear. His eyes twisted and leafed flourished to his chest as it leaned into the kiss, bracing his arm at her back to her hug her close. All right. A moment passed with them sitting in relative, yet comfortable silence. Kagome's head sitting against his shoulder, while he held her to him. Warmth radiating from his sleek hand enough for them to both stand their morning chill. Distant voices from the village, some familiar and friendly, and unfriendly, breathed him, but did little to permeate this lull. As comforting as the breeze was, and he also almost wondered if he would fall asleep like this, and wake to find it was just a dream. Turning the words over on his tongue and the memories in his mind, he looked down at her thoughtfully. Why did he submit this moment, even if it meant breaking this tiny piece they procured? So, what else did the old hag say? Kagome squinted at the horizon, then turned to a Chinese stare into him, poking and slitting aside. Soul reminded her to be nice and lovely compared to when she saw him all the time. Just that I need to take it easy, Kagome said, glancing away. She gave me some herbs earlier just to help with feeling sick. I'll just have to grind them up later. He also sighed. Look aside, he would be happy to see Kagome looking back to what she normally did. Even if that wouldn't last, but for a short while as her body adjusted. Well, that's good, he muttered, racking his brain for any way he could help outside of taking on more of the household work and maintaining a vigil over her. I'll take a trip to Jinsei's mom, see if she knows anything. Although Jinsei was half demon, his mother would have more expertise with birthing children with demon and human blood. He doubted that Jinichi would have something up his sleeves to help ease Kagome's sickness. I'll go too, Kagome stated. And Yusa's worried thoughts must have shown on his face because he added gently, I feel like I need to walk. Kaede said you were good for the baby. Walks? He also received flatly, tipping his head to the side. He didn't doubt Kaede knew how much about childbearing or rearing, certainly more than him, but still. Kagome giggled, covered her mouth with her hand and squinted. What's so funny? Being active, she clarified. Oh, Inuyasha nodded, glancing down Kagome's stomach. Can't say she's wrong. Inu yokai are naturally precocious. He remembered constantly needing exercise when he was young, dragging his mother out to the gardens, wanting to play with her and run around with her. She often lagged behind him, or waiting for him to tire himself out. But no matter how much he ran her ragged, she always lifted him in her arms and was tired and carried him home. Inuyasha smiled, laying his hand over Kagome's stomach together. What would she look like? Would they all be able to play together? He could hardly imagine what games. Things had changed in the decades he slept, and were certainly different when he refused to indulge. Shippo had more in the ways of games and tricks than he did, and Rin knew quite a bit from being a favorite of the children of the village. The thought crossing Yuasa's mind to pay more attention to Chichiro and Yukio when they played with each. Again, so close! You missed it by a consonant! It's actually, it's actually Huishi! Or as Moroku. It was overwhelming how many people there were to help with this. They remind me as they grow. There might be minor problems we had to deal with, too. Yuasa's eyes widened as he gazed after her. Minor what? They won't be as bad as normal, Kagome said softly, squeezing his hand. But there's still a demon, only partially. They said it's probably going to be really draining for me the more they grow. Yuasa scowled, glancing down at her stomach and up to her eyes. I didn't see look more concerned. What if something happened to her? It would have been my fault. But you'll be okay, right? Yuasa asked. We looked at her while she was trying to comfort him. I should be, Kagami reassured. Squeezing his hand again. I was told not to worry. Still knowing her, it would only made her worry more to be told not to worry. She was so conflicting that way. It irritated him sometimes, feeling relieved. Kagami cared so damn much. She deserved to be cared for too. It'll be alright, Yuasa stated. He was wavering, determined, set in the light of his jaw as he held her gaze. He'll be fine. Even if he was worried about the future, he knew he would do what he had to so she'd be saved. She looked onto her stomach, he corrected himself, so they would be safe. Yeah, Kagami said breathily, squeezing his hand. I'll be okay. He also smiled proudly, pressing against her forehead and made her giggle. That's my girl, he muttered, as he slipped against her cheek before pulling away to look down to her. Guessing half the village isn't here congratulating me. Rikishi doesn't know yet. Kagami shook her head, a smile in her eyes, and a small flicker of purplish pink pale blue. Most different than the pale lilac he'd seen through the travels, and up to a while ago. Kaede said she would let me tell everyone, she said. Wanted you to know first. Yuasa huffed, relief warming joy at being first, and he started to look away. Thanks. That whole parade of people congratulating me would have been the best way to let me know. I wasn't sure how he handled it if everyone he knew did. He wasn't exactly the crowd type, hence living on the very outskirts of his own village. Nagami smiled, but her gaze was focused on his eyes. He quirked her brow curiously when she cocked her head to one side. You think? She tittered tastily. He also huffed, rolling his eyes. Besides, you're their dad. I want us to share this moment first. You're their dad. He never knew the three words could sound so sweet and fragile, terrifying all at once. Looking at her and feeling for the glimmer of verity rent up in her heart, his heart fluttered. Kagami was here. They were going to be parents. He was going to be a dad. Yuasa grinned, lifted her up in his arms as he stood up, like you're close. Kagami's startled laughter, loud in his ears, didn't mind. Turning the lazy arc and hugging her close to him, burying his face against her hair to hide a foolish grin. He couldn't be happier. Okay, this was sweet, adorable, and cute. I do love it when we have some good moments where we get to see the inner workings of Yuasa's head. This does allow us more to understand him. And I do love seeing more to Kagami and Yuasa's relationship. I know some people tend to talk about abusive and all this when it comes to Kagami's little trick, you know what? But what I think a lot of people forget is that nothing was originally put around his neck to keep him under control, for one, and two, and he also can be a bit of an asshole. I mean, I love the guy, but he can be a bit of a jerk. That isn't abusive. That's somebody whapping his head to give us a sense. Otherwise, he's just going to continue cussing you out. One down, thousands more to go. See ya next time.